And hello, everyone. Hi, this is Robert Breitbard, Director of Educational Partnerships with Burlington English. And it's quite an honor and pleasure to welcome you all to one of the hottest topics in our world, and that's apprenticeships. And we're going to focus today on how does adult education fit in. So before I turn it over to our esteemed co-panel here, co-presenters, I'm going to I'm going to practice random acts of andragogy and let you all participate in your own learning. So if you'd open up the chat there down at the bottom, and if you'd enter in your name, the program you're with, and what city you're coming in from, that would be wonderful. Let us know who's out there. And again, one of the hottest topics going around the country right now for not just what adult education can be involved with right now. I know many of you already are, but also what we're hearing from DC and almost every state. Again, how can your adult education program fit in? So today we have a few housekeeping items that'll make things go really well. First and foremost, this webinar will be recorded and actually later this week, most likely we'll have it up on our website, www.burlingtonenglish.com. And down at the bottom, it has webinars. But again, we'll send you information about that, let you know when it's posted. So if you have any colleagues or want to rewatch, because there's a lot of powerful information, like I say, just know in just a couple of days, we'll have that up on our website and get you a shareable link as well. Once again, if you're just joining, we'd love to know who's in the room. So please populate that chat with your information. And then lastly, in a few days, you'll also get a follow-up email from us with a certificate of attendance, as well as the PowerPoint that we're going to be using, that our presenters are going to be using today. I should also say before I do turn it over to them that I know that this topic is going to have most likely a lot of questions and things that you might want to have followed up on. So if any reason we don't get a chance to cover your question, we'll make sure that we send a copy of the Q&As in the chat to our presenters and let them take a look at those and get that information back to you next week. So with that, you're in for a real treat today. So I'll turn it over to from Cuyahoga Community College, Corey Lupton, and from the State Office of Adult Education there in New Mexico, Dr. Amber Gallup. And ladies, now over to you. Thank you. And Dr. Gallup, I'll let you, alphabetical order, I'll let you introduce yourself. And
will do. Yep, we're going to get started right now. I'm just going to share my screen here. And how's that look?
Great.
Good. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Sounds good. I'll just move here through this first part. And here we are. Okay, so hi, everyone. My name is Amber Gallup, like Robert said. Thank you for the introduction. I'm the State Adult Education Director in New Mexico, and I also worked for many years in registered apprenticeship programs, primarily teaching the English of the trade and as an instructional designer. I worked with union-led apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs in California and the East Coast. And in addition, I wrote my PhD dissertation on the design of registered apprenticeship programs for frontline healthcare workers.
Excellent. And allow me to introduce myself. My name is Corey Lupton. I have the distinct honor of being the Western Region Program Director for Cuyahoga Community College Ohio Options Adults Aspire Program, or OOAA acronyms. And then I also was a GED and English language learner teacher for that program as well. The reason why I have some stake in this is I am a journeyman inside wireman, better known as an electrician, with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. My union card does say brother. And I was also excuse me, I was also the first woman to ever be a wind tunnel operator for the supersonic, subsonic wind tunnels at NASA Glenn Research Center in Cleveland, Ohio. And as far as pre-apprenticeship work, I was a curriculum development specialist and an instructor for Union Construction Industry Partnership Apprenticeship Skills Achievement Program, USIP ASAP, acronyms, terrible. And then I started my career with Hard-Hatted Women, HHW, gotta love that one. And not only was I an instructor and a board chair, I was also a product of that particular pre-apprenticeship. All right, and so why this matters now is nationally, adult ed, we are in a time of transition and definitely in a time of uncertainty. Community partnerships have become more and more important, and we need to start sharing resources. And this is incredibly important for braiding funding, finding creative solutions, for our learners to succeed, and let's be honest, for our programs to thrive and survive.
And, another reason that we think it's really important right now to talk about registered apprenticeship and the intersection with that and adult education is because we're really in like the midst of a change in our economy in which, and we've been there for a while, but it's definitely increasing the sense that workers for middle skilled jobs are increasingly in demand, right? And middle skilled jobs are those jobs that require a high school diploma or the high school equivalency diploma, but perhaps less than a 4-year college degree. Or something different than a 4-year college degree. Our students are really poised to fill these growing gaps in the workforce. And our partnership with registered apprenticeship programs can really open doors to these high quality jobs in well-paying industries. Nonetheless, I don't know, probably all of you, I was looking at your self-introductions as you were going through, a lot of adult educators here. We often hear, when we talk about this change in the economy and all the opportunities that might be right behind a certain door for our students, we often hear vague directives like, well, reach out to registered apprenticeship programs or connect with your workforce partners. We hear, you'll see a list in a webinar that says to do that, right? And that's the end of it. And while that is solid advice, you should connect with your registered apprenticeship programs where they exist. These quips don't really mean very much to us, and they don't help us bridge the cultural divide that sometimes exists between adult education and adult educators and employers, registered apprenticeship programs, and other workforce developers. So Corey and I want to talk about why and how to make that connection today. And also, so you can basically create a practical and knowledgeable foundation for your outreach.
Yes, this is an era of new and incredible beginnings. We should accept it that way instead of it's a challenge and that this is a roadblock. This is new ways to think about ways to serve our students and to create a better network across the country for adult education. So just a few things about some definitions and some terminology that we may use. Just like anything else, you have to learn the language. And so as far as a registered apprenticeship, this is something that is uniquely American, and it began back in 1937 with the Fitzgerald Act. Obviously, this was post-industrial age where we had to start regulating how workers could be in unions and organize and collectively bargain. Then it was further regulated by the Taft-Hartley Act, which is what we're currently under, and was part of my apprenticeship that I had to learn the history of the union movement. And that was in 1947, obviously post-World War II, when the regulation became much more stringent and the unions really started to blossom. Some required elements of apprenticeships are that they have it is a paid position inside of a workforce, meaning that you're with an employer. In particular, my union, it is multi-employer. So I'm under a union umbrella, and yet I may work for any signatory contractor that is under that union umbrella. Most apprenticeships last from 1 to 6 years. I do know of one, this is sprinkler fitters, that actually the apprenticeship is 10 years. This apprenticeship, because of so many different systems, is actually extended longer. The pay starts higher, but you are an apprentice for 10 years. And then, but there is structured wage increases, which is really, really helpful. These are living wages, they're sustainable wages. And with the registered apprenticeships, there is an element to it of, we call it OJT, which is on-the-job training. This is the bulk of the learning that an apprentice or a junior worker would go through. And also it has a portion of related technical instruction, which we are calling RTI, because we love our acronyms. And this is really, really important because of a good, especially construction, but other apprenticeships. It is good to have an educated workforce because of the technical nature of what these learners encounter. Most unions and apprenticeships are in a facility. In particular, unions, it could be in a union hall. Mine would, the ones in Cleveland are through something called a JATC, which is a Joint Apprenticeship Training Center. And it was very, very specific per each trade. And most construction apprenticeships are allied and involved with an accredited 2-year or 4-year institution. But we'll talk about more about that later.
Yeah, thank you. So that's registered apprenticeship and all of the terms that are associated with it, the most common ones. There's also pre-apprenticeship. And I think this is particularly important for adult educators because it's the way that we can really connect often, right? So a pre-apprenticeship, on the other hand, is a program that's designed to prepare people to enter and succeed in the registered apprenticeship program. Unlike a registered apprenticeship program, it's not regulated by the federal government. Though governments, it sometimes is regulated by the state government. It depends on a state-by-state basis. And we have, in fact, we actually have a resource that Burlington is going to send out later that lists what the case is in every single state is since as of 2024. So even though it's not regulated by the federal government, the government did recently issue guidance on quality pre-apprenticeships. That's called the TENS, the Training and Education Notification number 2323. And that's going to be shared as well. So that gives some a list basically and some explanation about quality elements of pre-apprenticeship programs if you want to build one. What makes a pre-apprenticeship, I think, special particularly is that where they exist, they're often designed to provide access to groups that traditionally don't participate in registered apprenticeship program and at high numbers, or who may have some barrier to access. And the registered apprenticeship, or sorry, the pre-apprenticeship program is designed to help them, help them access the program. So women, workers of color, speakers of languages other than English, and adults with lower academic preparation would all be examples of groups that, that we serve in adult ed and who might also benefit from a pre-apprenticeship program. So pre-apprenticeships usually have a curriculum that's aligned somewhat with the curriculum of the registered apprenticeship program to which they are connected. And the pre-apprenticeship will also include supportive services, opportunities for hands-on learning, and they necessarily have a close relationship with the registered apprenticeship program itself. So learners get facilitated entry into the registered apprenticeship program. There's some sort of preferred access once they successfully complete the pre-apprenticeship. So that's what we say that's what we mean when we say pre-apprenticeship. And I just want to note really quickly that I'm saying registered apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship a lot. We often say RA for registered apprenticeship, and then RAP, registered apprenticeship program. I'll put those in the chat as well, or one of us can. But so there's registered apprenticeship is RA, or we just say RA, and then a RAP is a registered apprenticeship program. I think it's also really important as we're doing our quick definitions here to say just a tiny bit about what a registered apprenticeship isn't. Because I think there's a lot of confusion. You know, registered apprenticeship or RA is a very hot topic right now. It's definitely a buzzword, but people get a little bit confused about RA or registered apprenticeship and things like internships, mentoring relationships of different types, career and technical education or CTE, or work-based learning of various types. There's also, you might know, there's an academic theory of learning called cognitive apprenticeship or apprenticeship learning. So these can get confusing as well with the terms. So these are all interesting programs and concepts in their own right. But what we're talking about here is registered apprenticeship, which is regulated by the federal government and is primarily a job and a workforce training opportunity simultaneously.
Exactly. But we have to keep in mind that even going through a pre-apprenticeship and having preferred status, it's not guaranteed employment because there are other steps that the learner has to take before entering into a true RA or RAP. Is that so? Most students must have a high school equivalency or a high school diploma, and they also must complete an entrance exam, a lot like going into a 2-year or 4-year academic institution. There is an entrance exam for most registered apprenticeships. Most of these exams, of course, are in English. They can be something as, I don't want to say simple, but something as basic as a civil service exam, which is the kind that I had, which was a test of manual dexterity, spatial relations, basic math, and basic reading. But now the electrician's test is much more stringent, and it has a math test that takes the students from simple computation all the way to Algebra 1, which is a requirement of the IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And the student must pass that and before they are considered in any other way. The pipe trades, which are pipe fitters, sprinkler fitters, and plumbers, they and also heavy highway and laboring unions have what's called Bennett's mechanical test. This is actually a physics exam of knowing how cogs and gears, how they turn and how they manipulate each other. Again, spatial relations, it's incredibly important. And then just, basic physics and Newton's law. So these tests are a little bit more stringent than they used to be, and it is not just as simple as coming in and beginning the job. There's also an interview process. Mine was straight out of The Godfather, where I walked into an oak-lined room and a giant oak desk with 6 scary 3-piece suit men on the other side and 1 lone chair on the other side. Years later, I worked with most of these people out in the field in high-vis t-shirts and dusty jeans, so they weren't so as intimidating once I saw them out in the field. But we can talk more about that in a moment.
Thank you. Yeah, that's funny, Corey. I want to talk to you later. I had a similar oak paneled room experience. All right, so I'm seeing some questions coming through the chat, and they're great questions. I want to say that, number one, we are excited about responding to all of the questions individually after this in particular, because I know they're probably going to come a little faster. But a lot of people have questions about what counts, right? And that's one of the points we want to make is that it's going to depend, registered apprenticeship program by program. So they make the rules, they make the decisions, and whether work keys or, an outside diploma or something like that are going to count is really going to be at the discretion of the registered apprenticeship program. However, I will just note that a lot of the programs, particularly the trades programs, do have, as Corey mentioned, their own tests that they've developed and have like an international level. And so, there won't be other tests that count for that. People will have to take the tests or do the requirements that are that have been designated as needed for entry into that particular registered apprenticeship program. So I would say that. Okay, so as Corey mentioned, a lot of these are historically in the trades, in the building trades and manufacturing trades. Great question. I want to just say this really quickly. I saw a question. Are pre-apprenticeships paid? They sometimes can be, but that is not a necessary feature of a pre-apprenticeship. Now, with a registered apprenticeship, they are always paid. But often a pre-apprenticeship is not. It's a way to have people, get into they don't have a job yet if they're still pre-apprenticeship. So typically not, although different pre-apprenticeships might have different resources they can draw on, and that Corey might have some examples of. So we want to talk a little bit about the benefits for adult education students, because that's really why we're here. Like Corey mentioned, historically, registered apprenticeship is found in manufacturing and building trades. So when we say building trades, we mean like plumbers, electricians, iron workers, pipe fitters, sheet metal workers, asbestos workers. I have worked for all of these unions and others in some capacity. And while registered apprenticeship is still very strong in these trades, and actually most registered apprentices across the country are actually in the trades, it's now expanding quite rapidly to all different types of sectors. So healthcare is a huge one. The big union SEIU 1199 is a real leader in this space with all different types of apprenticeship programs for healthcare workers, frontline and others. But a registered apprenticeship is also expanding to areas like IT, education, transportation, and the clean energy sectors, and quite a few others. So on apprenticeship.gov, which is one of the resources we're going to share, you can find those lists. And the reason that we're here today is that because in any one of these industries, registered apprenticeship is a great opportunity for our adult education students, perhaps even more than you might think. So one thing to know is that 90% of RAP completers maintain or find employment after completion, because remember, it's a job. So for most folks, they're in the job and they continue after they finish their registered apprenticeship program. But that's 90%, that's huge. If you compare that to the outcomes of some of your IET programs, integrated education and training, if you have those, you can see probably a big difference there. Also, registered apprentices, anyone who's participated in a registered apprenticeship earns substantially more than someone who has not participated in a registered apprenticeship program. There's a real huge research-based impact on future earnings for registered apprenticeship. Low-wage frontline workers are particularly well positioned to benefit from registered apprenticeship because it's much less costly than a traditional college education. In most cases, registered apprenticeship is free to the apprentice. It also offers a portable credential. So even if you don't stay in the job where you got your, you finished your registered apprenticeship program, you can still take this around anywhere else and it's recognized nationally, right? And there are many opportunities for advancement once you are inside your company and you've completed your apprenticeship program. Finally, I'll just note that, one of the big things I love about this, being like a learning scientist, is that it offers a hands-on learning opportunity and really active mentorship, which are two things that, have been shown to promote learning and that really help people and non-traditional learners as well benefit a lot from the registered apprenticeship model. Employers also benefit. These are expensive programs for employers and sponsors, but they get a loyal, safe, and skilled workforce. So it really benefits both. I thought you had some examples of that, Corey, yeah?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's been a true honor to have been part of a pre-apprenticeship from ground up, where I actually developed the curriculum by visiting the local JATCs, the local trade schools, learning what their particular trade needed before any consideration of coming into their apprenticeship. And I was able to create a base curriculum for my pre-apprenticeship students. The bulk of the students for the one particular pre-apprenticeship that I worked for were the formerly incarcerated. These were mostly men, but a few women that they were in halfway houses at the time. So they were fully out of jail and they were working through now their parole. Just a few examples. My one student, she really was a phenomenal student. She got more than 100% on every homework assignment and test. And she came to my classes. The class was 10 weeks long. This is a very long pre-apprenticeship. It was 10 weeks long, 8 hours a day. And the only rule was, there were many rules, but one of the high attendance rule was you could only miss 2 days. So out of 400 hours, you could only miss 16. She came to my class and she just looked terrible, and I couldn't understand why she was so upset. But her son had been shot in a drive-by shooting. He was in surgery, but she was so fearful of not completing my program that she came to class. Obviously, this was an incredible excuse, and I couldn't be more proud of her arc and where she went. She went into the sheet metal workers. She became an officer in the sheet metal workers, and now she is now a trades consultant with construction industry partnerships, and I couldn't be more proud of her. One of my favorite students was incarcerated for 30 years. He was the keynote speaker at our graduation, and he got the highest score on the Bennett mechanical test for the heavy highway laborers. And as he stood and spoke, he said, I wish that I had this earlier in my life, because all three of his sons were currently incarcerated. He said, had I gotten into the trades, maybe my sons would have followed me into the trades instead of uh, into the justice system. So just a few examples of the impact that we can have as adult educators and moving people into sustainable careers. We love our students. Love it.
Thank you, Corey. I'm sorry, I got behind a little bit on I was responding to some questions and I got a little behind on our slides here, excuse me. All right, so yeah, the last thing I wanted to just note real quickly after Corey gave those examples was that, we're talking about registered apprenticeship programs. We're often talking about union programs, which we often refer to as joint. That means joint with a union. So joint, and then a non-union or non-joint program is a program that doesn't have a union involved, right? Just an employer or a group of employers as well. So both joint and non-joint, or union and non-union, or registered apprenticeship programs exist, right? There are lots of non-union registered apprenticeship programs. And as long as they're registered, they have all of the safety requirements and other things that are required by the federal government to be registered. However, we often talk about union programs as the gold standard in particular because of the benefits to our students. So there are some stereotypes based in some experience, some real life experience, that RAPs tend to be dominated by white men and to shut out other groups. And someone just asked, well, this doesn't really apply to ESL students. And my answer is, it absolutely does, right? And in fact, that's one of the reasons that we want to talk with you here today. So there is a history in the trades unions. They were long dominated by working class men, Irish and Italian. And in fact, Corey and I were laughing because, Corey is Italian, comes from an Italian background, and I come from an Irish background. But we're women, right? And here we are talking about the future of registered apprenticeship for women and other folks that are historically not represented in the union-based apprenticeship programs. However, there's a few things to note. First, there's been a long-standing tradition of initiatives in the trades to increase the number of women and people of color in the registered apprenticeship programs. Unions have been very intentional about this. And research has also shown over and over again that unionized programs are more diverse and supportive of diversity than the non-union programs typically. Second, the apprenticeship programs in the newer non-trade industries like healthcare are much more diverse. The majority of apprentices in frontline healthcare registered apprenticeship programs are women of color, for example. And third, joint program, and many immigrant women. In fact, this is a major opportunity, I think, in places where registered apprenticeship programs in healthcare exist for women who are ESL students in our programs. And third, joint programs, or again, union-based programs, have an increased emphasis and high standards related to safety. It's really a cultural issue. There's a long culture of an emphasis on safety in these programs, which you might not be able to count on in the non-joint programs, although it may exist, but certainly not necessarily in the non-registered programs. So you have to be careful about the quality of the programs. Okay, so one moment here. So how adult education programs can plug in?
Can plug in. Of course, yeah, we see that the RTI, the related technical instruction, it is, of course, it is site specific and or union specific, but you can build one that is, like I said, I built a base level understanding of general construction terms and skills, and then they were able to move into something a little more specific. What I did first was obviously visited the places where the apprenticeship schooling was going to take place. Obviously, the on-the-job training is site-specific, depending on what's being built at what time. And so, you know, the real hub, the real book learning would be at these JATCs, union halls, and or other facilities that are utilized by the different trades. The one question was about English language learners. I had a student from Ukraine. She was OBGYN in Ukraine, baby doctor, and she wanted to become a doctor in the United States, but it's very prohibitive because many times they have to go back through medical school. So she went through a bridge program with the Cleveland Clinic, and she was able to become a radiologist technician through that, you know, in-house, in particular at the Cleveland Clinic, that pre-apprenticeship, if you would call it, or just site initiative. And then COVID happened, and there's a little downtime. And so she actually went back, got the credentials that she needed to become a doctor in the United States. And now she is a OBGYN baby doctor at the Cleveland Clinic. So for the ELL learners, they can aim high with that, or, you know, find other paths and elevations of a different trade. And it's amazing to see that. So I also took into consideration each entrance exam. So most of them have a math component. So obviously some of them became very math heavy, and I wanted to make sure the students had that basic understanding all the way up to maybe Algebra 1 as it's expected on certain entrance exams. In my pre-apprenticeship, we also conducted mock interviews where I brought in union officials, real hiring boards from all across every trade that I could think of, and try to sweeten my way in to get them to come and do mock interviews for our students, so it was less intimidating. And you know, nothing has to be specific, but it is important that we hit, you know, certain, you know, points for each trade and or institution, that we can create something that is going to further the student to the best of their ability to get into these high-paying jobs.
Yeah, thank you. And Nancy Olson, you know, kind of piggybacking on that, Nancy Olson asked in the, hi Nancy, asked in the chat, she said, has there been a discussion through the unions about accepting individuals without a diploma or equivalency while they are working on it? And I know that I have been told and heard that there, you know, this is a conversation. There are some registered apprenticeships you'll find out there that do not have that hard and fast requirement, or understand that people may be working on it as they go through. And again, it's really going to depend on the individual program that you're working with, by and large, and what their requirements are. I will note, though, that, for example, a lot of my experience comes from the trades. Remember that a registered apprenticeship is a job. And so often you need the minimum requirements for a job in that particular employer. For example, in a hospital, if you're going to be, you know, a CNA, a certified nursing assistant apprentice, or the same thing with the electricians or the iron workers or any others. For example, with some of the trades, I know Corey could probably give more information, but those tests are set at the international level. And so it's a requirement that a local would not be able to necessarily waive, right? That's not something that they're going to be able to do. So again, it really requires a pretty close discussion with the program that you're working with. So talking about ways that adult ed programs can plug into. So Corey's descriptions of providing the RTI is one very common way. Another really common way, and the way that I am particularly excited about, is designing your pre-apprenticeship or designing your integrated education and training program, or IET, which I know Robert glossed earlier in the chat, as a pre-apprenticeship. So I think this is a really promising approach for adult ed. So IET already has, by design in WIOA, if you're familiar with it, most of the elements that make a good pre-apprenticeship program. It's got simultaneous and contextualized academic skills, workforce preparation, and workforce training, right? Those three. And IET can help a future apprentice get familiar with the job, learn some of the key communication skills, or develop their English language proficiency while they're in the IET program associated with the adult education program. They can improve their English or academic skills enough to take the RAP entrance exam. They can finish their high school equivalency while they're in there, which is almost always, like we mentioned, a prerequisite, but not always, I have learned. And remember, a pre-apprenticeship helps people who are not traditionally represented in RA in big numbers get the preparation they need to access and be successful in the program. But what an IET doesn't have, so there's a lot of things that an IET already has, is basically what I'm saying. But there is also a few things that an IET doesn't have in the model that you would need to add to make it a true pre-apprenticeship. So you have to have an existing relationship with an established registered apprenticeship program. I often tell the story that when I first started giving presentations about registered apprenticeship at like COABE and things like that, a woman came up to me and said, she goes, hey, I've got this great pre-apprenticeship program. We've got all these pre-apprentices. It's going really well. They're getting this and this and this. They're coming out with this. But I just now need a registered apprenticeship program to connect with. And I thought, oh no, like, because you can't really have a pre-apprenticeship if you don't have a registered apprenticeship program that you're giving them entry into. Otherwise, it's sort of false promises, right? So you need that relationship with the existing apprenticeship program. In a typical IET, the outcome is often the credential itself, but the outcome of a pre-apprenticeship IET is preferred entry into that existing registered apprenticeship program. Therefore, you need a relationship with a registered apprenticeship program. An MOU should be in place with that program, detailing the agreement that you have about the access that completers will have once they leave the pre-apprenticeship and enter the apprenticeship. So there's no guarantees, right? Like Corey mentioned, these things have tests, there's interviews, there's entrance requirements. We have to make sure there's jobs available, but there should be some sort of preferred access for your completers, for your pre-apprenticeship program, in order for you to be able to call it a pre-apprenticeship program. Also, your curriculum development should be done in collaboration with the registered apprenticeship program so that you know what knowledge and skills are necessary for entrance and success within the program, and that you're helping your students gain those while they're in the pre-apprenticeship. Sometimes pre-apprenticeships have hands-on experience. That's a best practice. There could be field trips, or depending on the kind of industry it is, you may be able to get some hands-on experience, or you may not. For example, if it's a pre-apprenticeship in healthcare, you may not be able to get into the hospital and work with patients, right, before you actually have your credentials. So obviously there's limitations, but often pre-apprenticeships can give people a taste of what it's like to be in the apprenticeship program. And certainly journeymen and leaders coming to talk to the class, that can be a big part of these as well. But all this to say, the registered apprenticeship program has to be involved from the very beginning. One note that I'll share from my years of doing this work also is that when you're thinking about curriculum, you might think at first that, oh, okay, it's the tool names, it's the vocabulary of the job, right? And that may or may not be the case, but it's often more likely that the students, even the pre-apprentices, may know the tool names, know the vocabulary, know some of that, basic black and white vocab where they can learn it quickly. What's more likely to be the case often is the soft skills, the communication skills, the safety skills, and then the understanding of that particular workplace that takes center stage in a pre-apprenticeship program, less than just like lists of job site vocabulary, for example.
Allow me to second that. In talking to different apprenticeships, soft skills was the number one troublesome spot for a lot of the learners. Absenteeism is at an all-time high. The not comprehending and able to follow through on any type of 1 through 10, in order, build it as you go. reading blueprints obviously is learning a foreign language. You're reading something and turning some two-dimensional paper into a three-dimensional object. And it really takes a 1 through 10 step, don't start at step number 5 type of mentality. And it's been really, really difficult to get those kind of workers. I worked with a whole group of Russian people that came into the IBEW, into my union, and they went through the apprenticeship. They had a lot of understanding of the electrical work. They didn't have a full grasp of the language, but they did understand the electrical work. And so we had classes outside of the apprenticeship. This is not pre-apprenticeship work, but they actually took English language classes to increase their English so they would do better in the trade and in the apprenticeship. So we as adult educators can provide that prior to, so that they don't have to do it simultaneously. They can build up 1 through 10, right? Steps 1 through 10. I got an invitation to partner up with a chocolate factory in Cleveland. It's called Mally's, and they had a full Hispanic workforce that they were incredible workers. They did know the machinery, and they were beloved by the entire, it was family-owned chocolate factory, and they really wanted them to be able to move into upper management. So you can think someone at a base level of, oh, you're just coming in as an apprentice and then move to a journeyman. These were people that already had the skill set, but they were hoping that I could create a curriculum for them to make them more managerial and move into the higher levels of working for the chocolate factory. And I thought, because they're family owned, I really, really appreciated that they were willing to bring us in to look at building that for them. So it's just really important that it doesn't even have to be necessarily on a low level. You can partner with a business of helping elevate a worker into the next level.
Yeah, thank you. And I love those examples that you're providing, because really every situation is going to be different, right? And that's that can be one of the complexities of working with registered apprenticeship, but it's also one of the exciting parts. So it's a lot of possibility for creativity. It's a different culture. And, each culture has, things that are specific to it, and, different barriers and possibilities within it, right? 2 other ways that an adult education program might be able to connect, I can just say briefly, are community-based classes and workplace literacy programs. So with community-based classes, this is something that I don't have a lot of familiarity with, but sometimes you can work with a RAP locally that is really interested in doing outreach into the community more, perhaps outreach into your English as a second language programs, and with their families and communities. They want to have a bigger presence, and they might be willing to host classes, English for speakers of other languages classes at the union hall or at the employer as a way, basically a community service and a service for the families of the people who work there. Another model that's common in adult education, but sometimes gets short shrift when compared to integrated education and training, but it's still at the federal level, an allowable type of activity are workplace literacy programs, where you take the English as a second language or adult education class generally to the registered apprenticeship program and teach it there to apprentices that may need to improve their English language proficiency. I myself did this for many years in the iron workers and the electricians. So they already had people who were apprentices there, but they needed additional support developing their English language proficiency and talking about safety on the job. And so I provided those classes at night, and that's a very common way as well. As you start talking to the programs, we're talking about that right now, you'll get an idea of what they might need, what really sounds good to them, what are the needs that you might be able to fill. And speaking of that, we want to talk about what are the first steps for educators as you're trying to give people access to registered apprenticeship. So the first thing is just find these programs, right? So again, going back to these unhelpful quips we sometimes hear, contact your local adult your local your local registered apprenticeship program. Well, how do you do that, right? So it is very important to do that. Like we've said right away, you need to make a personal connection. There are various ways to do this. So you can go to apprenticeship.gov apprenticeship.gov. There are many links there which we can connect you with the apprenticeship programs in each state. Sometimes a better way is to go to your own state government site. All of them have apprenticeship divisions, apprenticeship agencies, programs, councils, whatever, that you'll be able to contact and find out the ones that actually exist in your area. That's probably my biggest recommendation, would be to get a hold of the folks at your state and find out what resources they have. There are also trade councils. Your local community college probably works with local registered apprenticeship programs and would be able to give you a contact as well. And then don't discount like the Rotary, Kiwanis, Chamber of Commerce, places where employers and people interested in workforce development congregate in your community. I give the example, I used to just do cold calls. When I was first starting working with the labor unions, I just looked them up. I'm old enough to say I looked in a phone book, sorry. And I age myself, I looked in a phone book, found the list, and I just started cold calling them and saying, hey, would you have an interest in helping your apprentices improve their English language proficiency? And right away, people were interested in having me come down and just talk to them about what it was that I was suggesting. You may also want to find some initial information out as you're doing those cold calls and those contacts. For example, do they have jobs available? Do they need apprentices? Is there a waiting list, or is there demand for this right now? What kinds of jobs are on offer? Are they quality jobs? If it's a registered apprenticeship, they likely are, quality jobs, whether they're joint or non-joint programs. But if they're non-registered apprenticeship programs, you need to be very careful, right? Because they're not regulated by the federal and state governments. They do not have necessarily the quality elements that you would have if you had a registered program. So it is important to be careful about that.
Yeah, I saw Robert put in the chat about looking up the apprenticeships, and I think that's great. But a lot of those start at either the national level or the state level. You really want to drill down, because there's regional levels and local levels, but there's other entities that outside of just those union halls, basically. There's collectives like Construction Employers Association, where it's a representative of many different trades, which might be a great place to start, because most pre-apprenticeships are not necessarily trade specific, out in building trades, but possibly in other areas, for example, like at local hospitals, and even other partnerships, for example, like NAWIC, which is National Association of Women in Construction. These are basically represent the people in the office. So they also have, links and ways to get in there, whether it be a comptroller, a superintendent, a project manager. There's ways to get into those areas of construction or trades. And there's a few that were in-house. So for example, in looking up and doing a little research for this, I found out there's called new collar jobs. And those are a few examples of those are like IBM, where they have very technical and specific processes and things that they work with, that they want to bring people in gradually to learn those systems. SwageLock is another corporation that they have an in-house they called it an internship, but it's very much an apprenticeship. The Eaton Corporation, Siemens Electrical, even in Ohio, the sewer district has very specific in-house technical learning for their specific systems. It's sewer, but you have to learn how to do those. And so you have to kind of think, where would a person need to have a technical skill, and how can I help them get there? Great.
Yeah. And I think the one comment I want to make, or, one additional thing just real quickly, is that, like, my advice to you is to build a personal relationship with someone in a local registered apprenticeship program first. Like, this is just two people talking about the possibilities of what might be possible, right? Before bringing in your institutions, like if you're associated with a community college or a school, for example, before approaching them at that level, my advice would be to approach people on a person-to-person level, a human level. A lot of you I saw are in the, English for speakers of other languages field. And so you are very well familiar already with of how to interact with different cultures, with new cultures. And I would say that a lot of those skills also apply here. Behave like you're interfacing with a new culture, right? You listen first, and then you share what you think you might have to offer based on what you heard. Be aware that it might look a lot different. What they actually are looking for might look a lot different than what you had in mind. But let your guiding light be your students and the opportunities that RA provides to them. It's really about building a pathway for them, whatever that looks like. So if you can come at the relationship with that as your guiding light and see where it takes you, I think you'll go far. Oops, excuse me, I just went back. Okay, so that being said, did you have anything else to add on mindset and approach, Corey?
Yeah, just briefly, you never know who you'll run across. I actually made a wonderful inroad at my local watering hole tavern. I noticed a gentleman sitting there with a t-shirt on with a union bug, which is the union emblem. And I recognized that he was a glazer. The glazer is commercial glass. And so I struck up a conversation with him, telling him that I had been to his JATC, his classrooms. And then I started talking about my program and the students that I represent and said, I think I have the people that you need to man the jurisdiction. And it turns out he sits on the Building Trades Council. He was very interested in what I had to say, and I am now on the books to present in front of the Cleveland Building Trades Council. Just from a happenstance meeting, instead of commiserating about the Cleveland teams losing on the TV, we actually had a meaningful conversation about building bridges.
And that's how you do it. That's perfect. So the last thing we wanted to talk about was just, opportunities here for you going forward. So it's no secret that right now we're facing a lot of uncertainty when it comes to our funding, right, across the adult education ecosystem, right, to say the very least, right? For many of us who happen to have federal funding, we just got our federal funding back after it released, after it was impounded for a while. But we know that generally speaking, we can expect that the landscape is going to be changing with funding. We also hear lip service regarding connecting with registered apprenticeship programs, in this context, but we need to be careful about this. And this is what I want to communicate. So registered apprenticeship programs are typically not offering grants, right? They're not going to be able to help support an adult education program in that kind of a way. They're not an alternative funding source, for example. Registered apprenticeship programs are often funded through collectively bargained contributions, right, via trust funds, or employer sponsors are going to be financing these programs. And every penny of that money is going to go to the priorities of that program, right, to the apprentices and to the long-term success of that enterprise. However, they can offer collaborations with us that make it worthwhile on a programmatic level, and of course also for our students, right? So they could possibly cover the cost of a teacher depending on what type of collaboration you've decided to have, right? They can offer in-kind space to provide the training itself. They often can provide tools and materials and access to experts and things of that nature. The high quality opportunity that you're offering through connection to a registered apprenticeship program is also going to help you bring people into your program at higher numbers often, and outreach among the families of the apprentices too, and through their deep networks in the community of the registered apprenticeship program will help you get access to additional students as well. You're really going to get, through this collaboration, you're also just going to get the legitimacy of a true workforce partnership and all that that affords, right? If you are able to develop a strong working relationship with a registered apprenticeship program.
And the reps, what they're looking from us as adult educators is that we can be the content experts, right? We already have an acumen for developing curriculum, rubrics, benchmarks that can show growth, and a deep understanding of the learners that we serve. And we are tireless advocates for them and give wraparound services for these particular scholars to set them on their way and do the best that they can do.
And I would just, close myself with saying that, when you're working with registered apprenticeship programs and you're building that collaborative infrastructure, which will take time, you want to try to keep the emphasis on equity, on access, and supports for students in the long term. Research has shown over and over again that wraparound supports that we can offer, that the union can offer, that the employer consortium could offer, are some of the main mechanisms by which people can not only access but also persist and complete registered apprenticeship programs, especially our students or people, apprentices who fall within the same categories or overlap, some of the socioeconomic categories as our students. So to the extent the adult education program can help provide those wraparound supports, or the wraparound or the registered apprenticeship program can help provide that. If you can try to build that into your collaboration, you're doing a lot to making sure that it's a successful collaboration. But ultimately, the benefit of collaborating with this registered apprenticeship program is really less about the benefit to the program and more about the benefit to the students, right? The stable, family-sustaining careers and the quality training and mentorship that a registered apprenticeship can provide. And we are just about out of time here. I want to take a little time for any last questions, and also to, of course, for Robert to do any wrap-ups. But we're excited about, we saw there were some questions coming up I wasn't able to answer, and Corey wasn't able to answer. So we will make sure that we do that after this is over. And Robert?
Yes, thank you. As everyone in the chat is saying, thank you to both of you, and really appreciate you all taking the time to join us. As Amber says, we've got just a moment here of some wrap up, and that is that again, this webinar is being recorded. Will be posted to our website. We'll make sure you get that link in just a couple days. You'll also get a follow-up email with this, not just this PowerPoint that you've seen, but we'll also add a slide with all of the websites that were mentioned, because there were so many great ones. We also know this was a multi-level classroom, so meaning a lot of folks are coming in from different angles and areas of expertise. And so maybe some of the nomenclature, the terminology was new or it needs an expansion. We'll make sure we have resources for that as well. So with that, can't thank you enough to our presenters. And again, as Amber shared, and Corey will provide the chat and all the questions and things to them, and give them a little bit of time to review those, and we'll send those back out again. And as always, we're always here to help you at burlingtonenglish.com. And so, ladies, any last thoughts as we send this off?
Corey?
This is an incredible opportunity. Thank you.
And I think my wrap up would just be, get out there and build those personal relationships. We can't say it enough. That's really how to do it. I would also say, keep in mind a registered apprenticeship program is in itself its own culture. It's a job. And, keep the benefit to the students in mind as you're having these conversations, seeing where, as you're trying to bridge this cultural divide that you might have as an educator and as a workforce developer, keep the benefit to the students in mind. What can you develop? What can you get a memorandum of understanding on, an MOU, right? That will benefit your students down the line and for years to come. If you can get this together with one or two registered apprenticeship programs in your community, what a huge benefit you can provide to your students. So that's my final word there on that.
And I love it as all of you in adult education land has been watching funding and the comings and goings of transition as far as departments of education and departments of labor at the federal level. You can see that possibly expanding what we do in adult education is more critical than ever before. And so what a fantastic way to get started on this. So finding out more about IETs, integrated education and trainings, the pre-apprenticeship, which I learned a whole lot on. Thank you very much, ladies. And then the area of registered apprenticeships. So with that, thank you all. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you at our next webinar. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Thank you, Dr. Amber. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Take good care. And ladies, I'm going to send you a quick link as well.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.